While it's hard to draw conclusions from yesterday's official MotoGP test session, the 5-day session at Sepang and Buriram has given us a pretty good idea of what the competitive landscape will look like in the 2025 MotoGP season. Here's a look at who's exceeded expectations so far and who's underperformed in yesterday's test session. Ducati's decision to stick with the 2024 engine instead of the 2025 one is good news for its rivals. They're also going to use the same chassis as last year, probably with the 2024 aerodynamics. The other teams have a better chance of catching up since Ducati is only making improvements to the electronics and suspension. The GP24 is still a super competitive bike, but since Ducati hasn't made any big changes to the engine or chassis, it might be easier for its rivals to catch up. Last year, Ducati dominated with 19 wins out of 20. But with fewer Desmosedici bikes on the grid, Aprilia and KTM might have a better shot at the podium. Also, Ducati has to use the same engine until 2026, but Honda and Yamaha can still upgrade their engines until the end of the current rule. The riders on the GP24 are expected to have a strong season. In past seasons, the Ducati versions of the bike had different performance levels. But this year, all 6 Ducati riders will be using the same engine, making the competition more fair. The test results showed Franco Morbidelli and Alex Marquez did well in the time attack, while Fermín Aldeguer was the fastest rookie until the last day of testing. Morbidelli has understood the character of the GP24 since his time at Pramac, while Alex Marquez quickly adapted after leading times at Barcelona and Sepang. Alex Marquez also showed an improvement in performance. After a pretty steady 2024 season where he finished 8th in the standings, he's now more competitive and is expected to achieve better results in 2025. Marc Marquez is on fire. He set the fastest time in Buriram, just 0.15 seconds off the lap record. This makes him a strong favorite to start the season off with a bang. He also successfully completed a 23-lap race simulation, showing a consistent pace that worried his rivals. Marquez's confidence is through the roof after his career-changing injury in 2020. He says he won't be back to his top form from the 2010s, but he's on pace to challenge Ducati's dominance. Meanwhile, Marquez's teammate Pecco Bagnaia is embracing the challenge. After losing to Martin in the 2024 title race, he's determined to show he's the best Ducati rider. But if you look at the pre-season test results, Marquez seems to be better equipped to compete for the title. In Buriram, the difference in performance between Bagnaia and Marquez was quite striking. While Marquez recorded the fastest time, Bagnaia faced various problems and had to restart the bike setup from scratch. He did have a long run, but it didn't reach the same level as Marquez. Bagnaia is still a strong contender for the title, but he's had some trouble getting ready for the new season. Now let's talk about Yamaha. Ducati says Fabio Quartararo's their main rival, but Yamaha's actually been doing really well. They got started on the test early in Sepang, and they improved their braking performance and top speed, which makes them more competitive in single-lap and long-distance races. But there are still some weak spots, especially when the grip's low. Quartararo also had some trouble with the front of the bike in Buriram, which left him almost a second behind Marc Marquez. Pramac, now a Yamaha satellite team, also showed positive progress. Jack Miller seems at ease on the M1 and could play an important role in Yamaha's revival. Honda also showed significant improvement, although it still has problems with peak speed and grip. The atmosphere within the team was more positive than the previous year. Luca Marini and Joan Mir are more satisfied with the improvements Honda has made, which is a big change from 2024, when they lost to Johann Zarco and Takaki Nakagami of the LCR team. Honda versus Yamaha is expected to be an interesting battle this season, especially after Mir was able to match Quartararo's speed in a simulated sprint at Buriram. Meanwhile, in the Aprilia camp, the decision to sign Marco Bezzecchi was initially doubtful, but his pre-season performance proved that the team's confidence in him was justified. Jorge Martin is out with an injury, so Bezzecchi is now the main focus for Aprilia. He was even the fastest Aprilia rider in the history of the Buriram track. Martin, on the other hand, crashed at Sepang, which ruled him out for most of the preseason. This was a big blow, especially since he had to adapt to a completely new bike. It's going to take some time for Martin to get the hang of the Aprilia RS-GP, and losing that time in preseason might slow down his adaptation process. Meanwhile, KTM, the Austrian manufacturer, is dealing with a financial crisis that's going to have an impact on their racing team. Based on the early test results, KTM seems to be trailing Aprilia. Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder, the Tech 3 riders, gave it their all, but they both had a tough time performing competitively. Maverick Vinales is getting the hang of the KTM's braking, but Enea Bastianini is still having a hard time adapting, especially when it comes to rear braking and corner entry techniques.